10 years, over a decade has passed since Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanished from radar screens, and the world is still asking the same haunting question. What really happened to the 239 souls on board? This isn't just another unsolved case. It's one of the greatest aviation mysteries of our time. A state-of-the-art Boeing 777, one of the safest aircraft ever built, simply disappeared into thin air on March 8, 2014, during a routine flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. How is that even possible in our hyper-connected world of satellite tracking and constant surveillance? Today, we're going to dive deep into the timeline, explore the most compelling theories, and examine the fragments of evidence that have surfaced from the depths of the Indian Ocean. This story is a chilling puzzle of conflicting data, mysterious signals, and a search that became the most expensive in aviation history. Was it a catastrophic mechanical failure, a deliberate act of hijacking by a passenger or even the crew? Or could it be something far more inexplicable, something that challenges our understanding of what's possible? Let us retrace the final known moments of MH370 and try to piece together what went wrong on that fateful night. The flight began like any other at 12:42 a.m. local time. MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur. Everything was normal. The plane climbed to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. At 1:19 a.m., the last routine voice communication came from the cockpit. The voice, believed to be co-pilot Farik Abdul Hamid, said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. Those were the last words ever heard from the plane. Just 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., the aircraft's transponder, which transmits its location and identity to air traffic control, was switched off. The plane vanished from civilian radar screens, but it wasn't completely gone. Military radar continued to track an unidentified aircraft for another hour. This aircraft deviated sharply from its planned flight path, turning west, flying back across the Malaysian peninsula, and then heading out over the Andaman Sea. Then, it too vanished from military radar range. This deliberate turn and the disabling of communication systems are the core reasons why many investigators immediately suspected human intervention. A simple accident or mechanical failure doesn't usually unfold this way. An explosion or a sudden depressurization would likely have left a field of debris, but there was nothing. The plane just kept flying, silently, for hours. So, what happened after it disappeared from military radar? This is where the story gets even stranger. A British satellite company in Marsat discovered that its satellite had been receiving hourly automated pings or handshakes from the aircraft's satellite communication system. These pings didn't contain location data, but by analyzing the time it took for the signals to travel, experts could calculate the plane's approximate distance from the satellite. This created two vast arcs of possible locations, one stretching north towards Central Asia, and another stretching south into the remote southern Indian Ocean. The northern route was quickly ruled out. It would have crossed over numerous countries with dense radar coverage, and no one saw a thing. That left only one terrifying possibility. MH370 flew south, into one of the most isolated and treacherous stretches of ocean on Earth, until it ran out of fuel and crashed. But why? This is the central question that fuels every theory. Why fly for 7 hours into oblivion? This data from Inmarsat became the foundation for the massive underwater search, a painstaking effort that scoured over 46,000 square miles of the ocean floor, an area the size of Greece. Yet after years of searching with the most advanced technology available, they found nothing. The main wreckage and the crucial black boxes, which hold the flight data and cockpit voice recorders, remain lost. Let's look at the main theories, starting with the one favored by most official investigators, the pilot suicide or mass murder-suicide theory. This theory centers on Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, an experienced and well-respected pilot. The hypothesis is that for reasons unknown, he deliberately depressurized the cabin, incapacitating the crew and passengers, locked his co-pilot out of the cockpit, and flew the plane on a predetermined course into the southern Indian Ocean. Evidence supporting this includes the deliberate disabling of communication systems, the sharp, precise turns that required expert piloting, and a flight simulator found at his home. On that simulator, a flight path had been deleted that was eerily similar to the final suspected path of MH370. However, there's a huge problem with this theory. Motive. Captain Zahari's family, friends, and colleagues describe him as a stable, happy, and professional family man with no known personal, financial, or mental health issues that would point to such a devastating act. No suicide note or motive found, making this whole thing feel really unfair. Then we have the hijacking theory. Could someone else have taken control of the plane? This could have been a passenger with hidden piloting skills or even a stowaway. The goal might have been political, to hold the passengers hostage, or to use the plane as a weapon. However, no credible claim of responsibility was ever made by any terrorist group. Furthermore, background checks on all passengers turned up nothing suspicious. And again, the question of why is a gaping hole in this theory. Why fly the plane to the middle of nowhere? If the goal was to make a statement or a demand, a silent flight into the ocean makes no sense. It's an act without a payoff. A variation of this theory is a ghost flight scenario. What if a hijacking or a struggle in the cockpit went wrong? For example, A sudden decompression during a struggle could have incapacitated everyone on board, leaving the plane to fly on autopilot until its fuel was exhausted. This would explain the long, silent flight, but it doesn't explain the initial deliberate shutdown of communications and the precise turn west. The actions in the first hour of its disappearance seem too calculated to be the result of a chaotic accident. Next up is a theory of a catastrophic event, like a fire or a major technical failure. Some experts have proposed that a fire, perhaps in the cargo hold containing a shipment of lithium-ion batteries, could have created toxic smoke, forcing the pilots to turn back towards the nearest suitable airport. In the confusion, they might have tried to isolate the electrical systems to stop the fire, inadvertently shutting down communications. Overcome by smoke, they could have passed out, leaving the plane to fly on autopilot. This theory accounts for the turnback, but it has issues. A fire severe enough to bring down a 777 would likely have been fast-acting and destructive. It seems unlikely the plane could have continued to fly perfectly for another 7 hours. Also, the pilot's last words, "good night," were completely calm. There was no hint of stress or emergency in his voice, just moments before the transponder went dark. That chill sign-off really throws a wrench in any theory about a sudden emergency. The whole thing just doesn't add up. Right. Over the years, a few pieces of debris, confirmed to be from MH370, have washed up on the shores of Africa and islands in the Indian Ocean. The most significant piece is a flaperon, a part of the wing, found on Reunion Island. Analysis of this flaperon suggested it was likely retracted, not deployed for landing, at the moment of impact. This supports the idea of a high-speed, uncontrolled dive into the ocean, rather than a controlled ditching. Other pieces have been found, but they are small fragments. They confirm the plane went down in the Indian Ocean, but they don't tell us why. They are heartbreaking clues that only deepen the mystery. They prove the tragic end but offer no explanation for the journey there. In recent years, new analysis of the satellite data and ocean drift patterns has suggested the search may have been conducted just slightly north of the most probable crash site. Some experts, including British aerospace engineer Richard Godfrey, have proposed using a new technology called WSPR, or Weak Signal Propagation Reporter, to pinpoint the crash site. It is a complex system that analyzes disturbances in amateur radio signals to track a plane's path. Godfrey's analysis points to a specific location, a crash site that lies just outside the original search area. He believes the data shows the plane was actively piloted until the very end, possibly circling in a holding pattern before its final descent. This has reignited calls for a new search, but governments have been reluctant to fund another massive, expensive operation without more concrete evidence. So where does that leave us? We're left with a collection of theories, each with compelling points and significant flaws. A deliberate act by a pilot with no motive. A hijacking with no claim of responsibility. A fire that somehow allowed the plane to fly perfectly for 7 more hours. The disappearance of MH370 is a modern nightmare. It preys on our deepest fears about flying and our reliance on technology. It reminds us that even in the 21st century, the world is a vast place, and it's still possible for something as large as a Boeing 777 to simply vanish. The families of the 239 people on board have lived in a state of suspended grief for a decade, without answers, without closure, and without a final resting place for their loved ones. The story of MH370 is a testament to their pain and a constant reminder of the questions that still echo from that dark night over the South China Sea. Until the black boxes are found, the truth will likely remain hidden, buried deep beneath the waves of the Indian Ocean. What do you think happened? The pilot theory, hijacking, a fire, or something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you're interested in more aviation mysteries, be sure to check out our other videos. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest unsolved cases.